Thank you for listening to the Unscripted Dreams Podcast with Joe and Marcus. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email us at unscripteddreams@gmail.com. If you're interested in listening to exclusive content that includes bonus episodes and our hindsight video series, please join us on Patreon at the Unscripted Dreams Podcast. If you're listening to our podcast on YouTube, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. Thank you. Let's do it.
Yo. As we know, life is full of surprises, both good and bad. The day-to-day journey is full of unforeseen obstacles, and sometimes it's hard to see our way through. Beyond the norm and mundane are where unscripted dreams live. Join us for thought-provoking discussions and interviews to help us navigate through the fog and create our own path. We are the Unscripted Dream Podcast, operating outside the margins to motivate and inspire our audience. So today's episode is geared around mistakes. We all have them. So
we all make them.
We all have them. We all make them. You get what I'm saying. Yeah, what a way to start off an episode, right? That was a mistake. Yeah, man. See, nobody's perfect, man. That's what makes this episode great, and as many as the other ones, man. And if somebody expects you to be perfect, I really feel bad for you. And that person, more so that person, just because I don't understand how you can put your expectations on somebody else that has expectations for themselves. That's very selfish. And we're going to get more into that, but I just wanted to start off with that because I just don't understand. I got some stuff to say.
Yeah, man. You jumped right in, no warm up, right? Just jump straight in on that. But Joe, I guess before I let you loose on this one, I guess, man, just as far as mistakes are concerned, I mean, like you said, Joe, we all make them, and I think it's really about having a mindset and understanding, what to do with that mistake and kind of figuring out once it happens and once you've already done it, because once you've made that error, that's it. You can't take it back, and I think it's important to kind of go and see what we do and figure out what happens after that occurrence and go from there.
Sure, most definitely. I think one of the most important things about mistakes is realizing that it is a mistake. A lot of people have ego issues where they don't realize the type of mistakes they're making until it's well after the fact, and what's said is said and done is done. And then they kind of open up that wound by trying to address the issue again after it's been passed. So they try to rewrite their wrongs another way. And, it's kind of like a domino effect. You try to make up for your past mistakes and not realize that the key to making mistakes is realizing them and moving forward. Of course, you want to do your due diligence as far as apologizing if that's necessary, if that's even possible. But the best way to do it is just pay it forward, man. You're going to make mistakes and experience a lot of hardships because of the mistakes you made. But you also need to give yourself grace, because some people don't realize that the mistakes that you made are mistakes that are common. A lot of people will make, just because a lot of people may lack self-awareness of a given situation. And most importantly, it's the process of you learning who you are, and in order for you to really know who you are yourself as a person, individual, whatever, you have to make mistakes. You don't get around being the greatest person out there without a mistake.
Yeah, so Joe, it's inevitable. Like I said, we'll all make mistakes. And I think one of the first things that comes to mind now is just like learning from other people's mistakes and watching. This is why it's good to be observational Is that because you see, I know Joe, you've seen people, I've seen people.
I think that's something that me and you have a quality that we share, and sometimes we sit back and like, let's watch this bozo just screw it all up, and we just sit back and just let it happen because they're not gonna listen to what we have to say because we're the reserved, uppity type people, so to speak. I'm just giving you an example, and they don't want to listen. They're hard headed. So what's the best thing to do? A hard head makes a soft, you know what? So you gotta let them bump their heads a couple times.
Yeah. And one of the things with, learning from other people's mistakes is, really, like I said, the observational piece is huge. And just, taking the time to really see what other people have done. I mean, in any facet of your life, just looking at, like, well, you think to yourself, like, hey, I want to do something well. Well, sometimes it's important to do that thing well. It's important to understand why the people who are successful, why they reach that level of success, and why they achieved whatever they achieved that you want to pursue and you want to achieve. And then you
Mm-hmm.
need to look at the people who failed as well, who made mistakes along the way, and learn from those mistakes so you don't make the same mistakes as you start on your journey or continue on your journey.
I agree. You're definitely guaranteed to be bruised, battered, scathed or unscathed, whatever. But I guarantee you'll push through as long as you're still breathing and you're making a conscious effort towards it every day. Those mistakes are going to be hidden gems going forward.
Yeah. And one of the things, Joe, is with mistakes, and I think later I'll get into some of the positive mistakes. You'd be surprised in history, the things that we enjoy every day that are the essentially the product of someone making a mistake. But to stay on track with this, one of the key things with making mistakes that I see every day is just like this social media thing. Like Joe, we were just talking about this before we recorded, but it's important to understand your audience and just know that you can't say everything in front of everybody. uh, you know,
A lot of people seem to think that they can, and they think that that is harmless, but it's way more detrimental to you than you know. Either you bashing somebody and not realizing it's making you look dumb because you're bashing somebody that you may possibly represent or have affiliation with, whether that's an organization, a relationship, or a friendship, whatever. Like by you talking down on something you represent, what does that make you? And a lot of people don't understand that because they're too frustrated or they see red and they don't realize the damage that they're causing. That's toxic, so to speak.
yeah, and I said that's every day. Every day somebody's doing something. When you put that stuff out there, everybody can see it, and everybody is not your audience. You have to understand that.
And it amazes me too because you may think some of the people that are so close to you, the only reason why they keep you close is because they want to pick your brain. They want to control you like a puppet, and people don't understand that some people have that much power over you and you don't even realize it.
Mm. Yeah. So, I mean, Joe, all right. So I want to I'm share a story. It's not my story. I'm not doing another story time on myself for a minute, maybe for an episode or two,
Hey
but
man, I can kick back and listen. I'm cool with it.
no, that's, that's all right. But all right, Joe. So what do you think about, I guess, how we should perceive mistakes? What's your process? What do you go through when you're looking at an error that you've made? How are you approaching that process of reflection?
The initial thing is impactfulness, if that is a word. I think it is. Just thinking that how impactful the mistake was. Is this something that's only detrimental to my own health, or does this impact other people as well, whether that's physical or mental health? That's very important. And, you come first, most importantly, but in a situation where you make a mistake, you kind of have to put yourself on the back burner, just because it's almost like a beacon. When you make a mistake that impact other people, you put that energy out there and it happens. In other words, and for you to bring that back home, you have to bring those signals or those waves, channel that energy back to you. And the best way to do that is by addressing the situation with all the people that are impacted by it. If you don't do that, you'll never heal from it.
Yeah. So owning it to an extent is what you're saying on the back end.
Accountability, 100%. That would be the first step, accountability.
Mm-hmm. And that's huge because I mean, like Joe, some people will I've seen it a lot. They'll make a mistake and they'll either they'll try to cover it up, they'll hide it, they'll try to pawn their mistake off on somebody else. But the last thing they'll do is,
You know what that screams, right?
why don't you share with us, Joe?
Insecurity.
Yeah, but the last person they look at is themselves, and that's really the first thing you should do. But also I'll add is just like you really have to, like I said, that's why I asked you that question, Joe, because you really have to look at it. You have to look at things and approach it, from a level of impact, and look at who's affected by it as well. So I am going to share a story, but this isn't my story. All right. So there's a book. It's entitled "Creating Magic." It is really the story of Lee Cockrell. He's the executive vice president of operations for Disney World Resort. So in the beginning of the book, he's telling the story about how, now, if you're working for Disney and you're up in that level, like your prime time.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
So one of the things like with mistakes is, you have to sometimes things will happen and you're not in the right mindset to even process what you're doing and how you're kind of running into certain issues and why things continue to happen to you. So anyway, in this book, Lee, he's talking about, early in his career, it's like he worked for different chains of hotels and things like that, resorts, things like that. And, he found himself in a situation where he would be like, the manager or something like that. And he would like get into a position, and some people, they get in positions and they want to immediately exert their power over the employees and things like that. So he goes to this restaurant, well, wherever he's hired at this hotel, and he starts going in there. He just starts trying to do things, and he doesn't consult with the executive chef, and the chef kicks him out the kitchen. I don't think he can even go in the kitchen like that, but he works. He really made the job more difficult for himself. So as his career progresses, he moves on. He's working at one of maybe the largest hotels in New York, I think. But he has a guest that, like at the restaurant in the hotel, one of the guests, they accuse him of they accuse one of the servers of manipulating the check. So what he does is he goes to the server and he doesn't give the server a chance to even defend himself or try to get the story from, both sides, from the customer and the employee. And that employee that he ran up when he ran up on him and accused him of something, he grabbed a beer bottle and smashed it on his face. So, so that was a mistake he made by approaching that situation. So then he goes. So again, this man eventually becomes the vice president of operations of Disney Resort. But he had another incident where he had an employee that spoke to him, like an employee said some discriminatory remarks or something, and he confronted him. He was pointing in his face or something. And then the guy like pushed him out of the chair and like gave him a 2-piece combo, hit him over the head with a clipboard and busted his head open or something. He had to get stitches. He had to get stitches for the guy who busted the beer bottle on his face too. And then he further advances in his career. And, I guess at this point, like his name rings bells. Like they know if Lee's coming through, man, he'll cut you, chop you up. But, he goes to see this guy, and this guy's like so shook that he like passes out and has to go to the hospital. And it was after his like third incident that he realizes that he's being passed up for promotions because he's so aggressive to his employees. And, he had to go and have a discussion with himself. And, he realized that in order for him, he realized that he was getting passed up for promotions because of how poorly he was treating people, how aggressive he was being with his employees. And he had to make a decision to kind of go out there and learn how to become a better leader and learning how to treat other people better. So that was just like an example of someone who he continuously like made mistakes, got pieced up a couple times, sent somebody to the hospital because they were shook, and then after making those, mistakes, he learned that to be a better leader, he has to change things about himself. And he eventually ends up, running these resorts, one of the biggest resorts in the world. I think Disney is maybe one of the biggest resorts in at least America. But But I think that was just a good story because it shows that sometimes you have to make the same mistake a few times before you learn a lesson.
I'm a living testimony of that. But yeah, man, I can resonate with that story, and I already understand the how he could easily overlook those situations. When you think you're above certain people in certain positions, you think that you have the authority to, of course you have the authority to make some changes to go your way. But what I'm trying to say is sometimes you don't even think about, you lack empathy. Not sympathy, but you lack empathy. You're not empathetic with the people that serve you or that are under you and how certain things impact you and the organization in itself. And this is something he had to learn. Because think about it. You get a whole bunch of managers, execs that go from one executive job to another executive job. So say executive goes from marketing from a healthcare agency, right? Then he lands a big job in commercial or whatever Disney is. What would you consider that? Hospitality, right? Mm-hmm. To a certain extent.
Yeah.
So say he goes from healthcare all the way over to hospitality. There's some similarities there without a doubt, especially when you come down to the customer service idea. But it's totally different environment. This guy didn't properly allow himself to adapt with his situation, and that's the reason why he made those mistakes, because he was so locked in from his experience prior to that he didn't realize that you have to learn. Every new experience is a learning journey. This is why people tell you to be patient. This is why people tell you to observe and open your eyes a little bit. And you could be 5 years old, you can be 15, you can be 30, you can be 50, you can even be 90 years old and never learn this lesson, just because for whatever capacity you never had to utilize that until that point in time. So there's no age range on how you can read the room, so to speak. There's no age limit on that. And I think that's really important for people to understand that in this episode. We all learn different things at different stages in our lives. So one mistake that you might make, I may have not learned that lesson, and I probably won't learn that lesson decades from now, versus I learned a lesson yesterday from a mistake I made, and you've been learned that lesson, Marcus, like what, kindergarten? There's no age range for that. You know, like there's people out there that don't know how to share toys or share whatever they have, but you've learned that in kindergarten. But say that I never learned that in kindergarten, and that's the reason why I'm causing havoc and wreaking havoc on everything else around me. Like there's little small intricacies like that that contribute to big people stuff and situations. And this is the reason why we have issues that are going on right now from a societal standpoint, because these people have never learned the basics on how to treat people and teach people properly on how to do things. It's mainly out of fear, but it's also out of just being uneducated because you've never had that experience. So sometimes you do need to make these bonehead mistakes for you to actually learn. I'm not going to say you're going to have grace, but at least you know after you didn't got jumped on a couple times by some people, per the story, he got beat up. So, sometimes it takes that for you to really learn, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the hard way. That's definitely learning the hard way. But like you can tell, man, like I could tell when I was reading it, I was like, man, he's probably just, he's going in and talking to people just like everybody's worked for somebody like that where they're just rude. Like somebody
talk to you any kind of way.
Yeah. And somebody and then that type of manager, they work long enough, they come up against somebody who's gonna fight back. So that's the risk of being like that, because sometimes you think, sometimes you have people that, they feel like they need their job and all this other stuff, and they'll fold or whatever. But there's some people that they got high level respect for themselves, and you're not going to be able to get away with just talking to them any kind of way, even though the action they take might not be the right action, and it might affect them negatively. they're still going to do it. You still have to
Oh,
deal with those
you
consequences.
you gonna learn today. That's one thing you don't want to hear. Or you pick the right one today. You don't want to hear that either.
Yeah. We've all seen, I've probably seen that too many times, but one of the things I think, and that's why what you're saying, Joe, I think that's why hindsight is important. It's just, you gotta really take a look at what happened. Like going back to that story, if somebody hit me in the face with a beer bottle, I'm taking a pause after the situation's over because I don't know how I'm
Bro,
pretty sure how I'm gonna respond to that.
that's attempted murder.
but but after that happened, I mean, you have to do an investigation of what was going on with yourself and like everything else that was happening. If you get slapped up, and then I mean, if you get then the second time, man, you get pushed out your chair and slapped across the head with a clipboard. So that's a lot, and that's why you have to take that time to really think about like why did all these things happen. But I think one of the issues is, and this is more so a character issue, is that some people aren't able to see that they themselves are the problem. And when your mindset is set up like that, you kind of leading yourself down a path to ruin, because you have to understand that you can be the person that is causing almost, sometimes somebody will blame everybody else and they're the sword, like the point of origin for all the chaos that's going on around them. So like one thing I can think of is just like as an employer, having employees, like, your employees, they'll make mistakes, based on however the severity will depend on how you handle it. From my personal experience, had employees like they've made mistakes, both like big time mistakes and minor mistakes. But when you're in the leadership, bro, you got to figure out how to fix it. You can't just go around pointing the finger and doing all this other stuff. But look at it, when you're looking at it from a certain perspective, when that employee makes that mistake, I have to ask my question. Maybe the reason they made that error was directly related to me. Like perhaps I failed to train them or failed to train the person who did train them on whatever they did. Or sometimes, and I've definitely done this before, I assume just because someone brought a level of expertise or experience to the table that I didn't have to teach them or train them up on certain things, because I assumed that they knew something and they ended up not knowing it, or they just had been maybe removed, or there was something that where they maybe felt like that didn't apply to it. And that was, that I had to take ownership on that. And then you have to, from that mistake, you have to make sure you put something in place and systems in place to where that stuff doesn't happen again. Instead of just running up on an employee and blaming them for everything. Like sometimes it's the person in charge, like sometimes it's your fault and you have to make it right instead of blowing up on people.
I hear that all the way, man. Sometimes it's unpreventable because people let their egos get in the way. But I'm gonna let you know this off top. Anytime I'm on the job making my dollars and I get attacked like that, that's my last day. I'm sorry. That's my last day. That was a mistake well learned, but I'm not coming back. Not coming back. Sorry.
Yeah. So one of the things, the other thing, just with making mistakes, and this is one of the things, because I've made some mistakes like very early on in my career. I mean, I feel like I'm young enough to where I'm still early in doing what I'm doing. But one of the things is you'll make a mistake. I remember I made one of the mistakes. I don't know exactly what I did, but it was something I didn't know. And somebody had to have a talk with me. And then, I think I did something. I don't like, I just can't remember exactly what I did, but I was nervous about it. And, from that mistake, you start to worry about things like, are you going to lose your job? And, things like that, maybe you're nervous or you're embarrassed because you made a mistake, things like that. And sometimes, like for me, when I make a mistake, like nobody's going to be harder on me than I'm going to be. So it doesn't matter what anybody else does. Like it really comes down to, me and what I do and how I see things. But all right. So, one of the things when you make these decisions or you make a mistake is that you start to feel, you had that fear, that, you think you're going to get fired or, something else, will kind of happen to you. And the thing is that when you make this mistake and you get your reprimand or whatever that they provide you, they write you up, put it in your file, also there's nonsense that they do to document things. If that's if that's the path that they take, is that sometimes that mistake that you make and that fear that gets in the way is that sometimes you will allow that fear to prevent you from doing things that you're good at or that you excel at. It's kind of like an athlete or something, like somebody who like misses a three in a big game or something like that, and then they kind of freeze up or they choke in future games because they took one bad shot. Like all that mistake is that one mistake is you taking one bad shot, and you just got to go out there and keep shooting. I'm not saying go out there and be a gunslinger, but but get out there and keep shooting and keep trying, because it's that maybe that area in which you made a mistake in is one of the areas that you'll later be exceptional at. And part of you being exceptional is because you made that mistake. So, I think you have to like really make your mistake, deal with it, come to terms with it, whatever reprimand you get, go ahead and take it, feel sorry for yourself, be mad at yourself for a little bit, but go ahead and keep it moving.
Yeah, most definitely. You're definitely speaking life into that situation there. The key is to never stop moving. So I just want to say or add on to your point that you're making here is that it's very important that people are inspired by other people's failures, not just their accomplishments, but their failures. And the reason why I say that is because I realize that I'm human just like anybody else. So if I'm human just like the next person, I need to realize that some of the mistakes they've made can apply to me, especially if I'm following their formula of how they've done whatever they've done. Say that this was someone like an icon to you that you look up to. So if you're following their blueprint of how they're doing things, it's very easy for you to fall into those same pitfalls. That's why it's very important that you more so study their failures and how they went on the decline. So you can negate or navigate the best way you can through that situation, whatever that may be. So with that being said, man, you can use their failures as a rites of passage to make the experience that much better for you. You learn from their mistakes, and you most importantly got to humble yourself, man. Don't be afraid to ask questions to people that are more experienced than you are, or people that are around you in your circle, because they may see some things that you may not see because you're the person that's going through it. You're the one that's living the experience. So having friends that are far removed from whatever you're doing out there is very key and very important. That's why I always try to tell people, have friends or family, but more importantly, friends that are not necessarily close, but close enough where they know what you do, but they don't know what you do. And that can be very slick or very sticky, depending on how you handle your relationships. But what I'm saying is, you need to have somebody that's a little bit outside of your circle that you can not necessarily confide in. I don't know how your relationship would be with this person because it varies from all different type of people, but you need to have somebody that can actually see everything for what it is outside of what you see. You don't need a yes man either. This person has to be someone that's clear cut and can point out what's going on with you. It's very important. So with that being said, with you studying certain people, you got to learn what choices they've made in life that were critical and to obtaining what they have today, because one small little detail can put you ahead or severely behind. So make sure you process as much information as you can in your failures and apply it to how you can improve yourself day in and day out. So study everything you do, but not to the point where you drive yourself crazy. And you may learn a lot in a very short period of time. After all, you do want to cut down on the time it takes for you to get to where you would like to be, right? I would imagine. So let this message more or less motivate you to push yourself beyond your limits. Actually brainstorm or document how many different ways you can do something for yourself. Documenting is very important because you can turn it into a process, a workflow process. And once you have a workflow process and a system, it's game over from there. Because when you have a workflow process and system, that's you unconsciously, but consciously as well, subconsciously actually having, once you connect all the dots, you can figure out what's your triggers or what's your issues, and you would learn how to actually work through that process with minimal errors.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, I think you captured it pretty well. I mean, I don't really have much else to say on it. Just a couple things, just mistakes, just a couple items or things that were created by mistake. One of the maybe more common things is penicillin. I forget the guy who was working on it, but it was like a petri dish or something that thought it was contaminated, and then he started like eating up the bacteria. It was something he discarded. Then he went back to it and saw that there was something else. Something else was going on, and that ended up being penicillin. And then
Are you serious? An antibiotic?
Yeah, that's big, man. That's a big deal, man. That's a big deal. We need that. And then the second was the microwave. Percy Spencer is an engineer. He was testing a magnetron, and he had a candy bar in his pocket, and he was fooling around doing something with this thing. And then he reached in his pocket. He realized the candy bar had melted in his pocket, and then he started like fooling around with stuff, and he realized that you could like cook food with waves or heat things with the waves. And that's why you have to, that's why it's the microwave. But that was a complete accident. It was not intentional. Microwave is in almost every home. All right, so yeah, that was the microwave. Definitely something in every household, almost every household, that was created by mistake. And the thing about that, what's important about that, those two really inventions maybe that were discovered or created by accident, is that the two people that made these discoveries, they were working, they were making effort, they were actively doing something, and it was through their effort that they created, although unintentional, it was through them actively putting work in that created something that became beneficial for millions, if not for billions of people. So that's just important. It's important. I just want to share that, but that's it.
Right on, man. So you guys probably thought we was going to talk about a whole bunch of ridiculousness per this episode regarding mistakes. Realistically, we just wanted to be chill and just let you know that everybody's human, man. So there really ain't too much to elaborate on that. Just simply observe what's going on and what's happening in the process of making these mistakes. Very important to hold yourself accountable for your own actions at any given time, because you never know how that could be a contributor to getting you close to where you want to be, or can prohibit you from where you want to be. So maybe you should learn from your mistakes so you don't get hit upside the head like my man's. So it is what it is, though.
All right. Well, that's your feel good, Joe. Then, as usual,
I'm loving it. It's been great. Tune in next week. Later.